What is up? This is Andrew, and this is the second installment of our vlog, and I'm going to give an update on my progress as well as other things I've learned over the last couple days. So to begin with, I've had two calls so far. The first was with a cultivator who specializes in white label cultivation. So they'll grow it and then ship it to my dispensaries. That's sort of the basis of what they do. The second company that I spoke to is a consultant, of which there are many in the cannabis industry, and for good reason, because they really know what they're doing. And if you're seriously building a cannabis business, then it makes sense to at least speak to them to see if they can help or if they can answer questions and that sort of thing. And I obviously have a ton of questions, so I think we're going to get along just fine. The question is whether or not I need them to do whatever I need to do, but the great thing is I haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet, so we'll see where they come into play. But they seem very knowledgeable and, like most cannabis consultants, easy to talk to. Let's see what else. I started working on the business plan, but I haven't made a lot of progress. Nothing really to report other than I've started. Also, I started working on my product review videos. So today I am drinking some Coke. I don't normally drink sugary beverages, but this was a really interesting product, and I can't wait to show the product review video on it, because I didn't even know this existed, and it confirms a lot of my beliefs about what's going on in the cannabis industry right now. Let's see what else. So some of the surprises that I learned from the calls I had this week are that it turns out flower, if you remember from my last episode, I was saying that creating an incremental business or a bootstrap business or a white label cannabis business, I thought that it would be easier to create it using starting with flower, by just selling flower in jars or flower in bags, and then eventually moving on to vape products and edibles. But the people I've spoken to so far seem to think that vape is the easiest way to start. They're going to get some more details on it and verify their suspicions, but that's a surprise. I mean, it's a surprise, but it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise because there are so many people who are producing all the different types of resins or oils or whatever they're putting into their pens. There's so many people doing that, and they're doing it on a fairly large scale, that it makes sense to just sort of plug into that. With a grower, it's a little bit more challenging because it's not it's less black and white. You don't know exactly how many pounds you're going to get or what you're going to get, so it's a little bit more challenging to predict the costs and the volume that you're going to do with flour. Whereas with oil, you're like, just give me 10 gallons of oil into these cartridges and it's done. They already have the oil on hand. Most of the oil is, at least according to my carts, is up to 6 months old, so you don't have to wait for harvest, even though it's harvest time right now. And in theory, you wouldn't have to wait for harvest, and right now I don't have any capital, so I'm not in a position to move right now, even though it is harvest time. But that was a really big surprise. The second surprise was that I thought that flour would be the easiest way to start an incremental cannabis business, because you don't need to go through manufacturing. And if you remember, there's three groups of licenses. There's manufacturing, there's actually I forgot what they were already. I mean, I know that there's manufacturing, cultivation, and then the other group, but I thought there was another one. Anyway, the point is that I just thought if I worked with a cultivator and their license, it would be a lot easier. But it turns out I still have to work with a manufacturing, because even though they're just putting the flower into jars, it's still considered light manufacturing by the cannabis regulations in the state of California. So that's why the consultants were saying that flower isn't necessarily easier than vape products. So that was a surprise for me. The other another surprise is that there's a large number of cannabis companies that already have licenses that are looking to be a white label partner. So because I hadn't heard of anyone doing it before, I thought it was a novel idea. It turns out it's not that novel. People on both sides of the equation, people like me who are looking to build it, who are looking to build up a brand without a license, and then there's people on the cultivation and manufacturing side who have, a ton of product, and maybe it's not as liquid, or they don't have as many customers as they need, and so they're looking to either supplement their income or supplement their demand. Like maybe they can't sell as much flower as they're growing. So to supplement that, they're looking to outsource some of their product. Outsource isn't the right word. They're looking to white label some of their product to help move their inventory and turn over their harvest. So that was a surprise for me, because I didn't think that there were a lot of people doing this, but it turns out there are. The last surprise was that the consultant confirmed my suspicion, or confirmed my belief, that focusing on the brand right now is the most important thing, as opposed to focusing on the methodologies that are used to grow the flowers and harvest them and package them. It's my belief that focusing on the marketing and focusing on the customer and on the relationships within the industry are more important than creating the highest quality flower, because it's my belief that almost everybody working in the legitimate regulated cannabis trade in California are creating superior products that are top shelf. So I know that not everybody is, but I believe that the majority of growers on the legitimate side and the majority of brands on the legitimate side are creating just excellent product. And so I'm not looking to differentiate my product and saying, oh, it's top shelf, or it's a premium product, because at this point everything in a dispensary that carries a 200% tax is a premium product. So you don't have to tell people that. I think that almost everybody knows. So that was a surprise that someone else is like, oh yeah, you're doing it the right way by focusing on building the brand and relying on other players in the space to create the flower, package it, deliver it. By just focusing on the brand, it's the right thing to do right now. That's what they were confirming. All right. The next topic I want to talk about today is the license search that I did. So I was able to pull down all the different license databases for the state of California. There's 3 sources for that, as I've spoken about previously. And I went through and did some rudimentary analysis based on different counties and cities to try to understand where the majority of growers are and where the majority of manufacturers are, so that I can, see if it makes sense to move into a different county, because maybe, like the county of Monterey, California, is a little bit impacted, and they're really restrictive on new licenses. But I'm trying to find other counties that are more friendly. But I don't think I have to do too much research on this, because it seems like the consultants and the growers that I've spoken to have a really good understanding of where there's space for additional license holders, if that's the route that I want to go. So what I want to talk about now is the regulation of white label cannabis producers, which is what I would like to be, or what I'm thinking of doing. It turns out in January of 2019, the state created some supplemental laws to augment the initial batch that came out in 2016, 17, 18. And one of the changes that they made in those January 2019 laws was something called Section 5032. And what it says is that if you're going to be doing white label, you have to have a license, basically. And because licenses are so hard to find, it it limited what people were doing and what people wanted to do. At least what I wanted to do. My goal was, to not get a license, not do anything, just, write a check to a cultivator and have them ship the product to a store. Right? I thought it'd be that easy, and of course it's not, because by regulation, anybody who touches cannabis or anybody who's making a profit off of the cannabis industry, the state of California wants to know who they are. They want them, on the record saying, look, these people are, regulated players who, here's their name, their address, their contact information in case you want to get in touch with them. It adds legitimacy and trustworthiness to the legitimate market, which makes sense. But by forcing people to get licenses, I think that's a little bit, it's a little bit too much, but, who knows? Maybe there was an easier way to get all your information in the system without having to actually get a license, because getting a license is a very challenging and expensive proposition. Whereas if they could just have a database of people who are involved in the industry who don't have licenses, right? Like what, $5 to add your name? It's not a big deal. But anyway, I digress. The point is that they're putting more restrictions on white label cannabis manufacturing, and it impacts people like me who are looking to just start a white label, company. The interesting thing about it is that when they put these restrictions into place in January, it applied to not just growers and not just manufacturers, but everyone in the supply chain. So, growers, manufacturers, transportation, dispensary, everybody. I mean, obviously, all those people have already have licenses, or else they wouldn't be doing it. But for example, if you wanted to white label or partner with one of those along the way, then it wouldn't work out because you have to be included. So so that's the problem. The problem is that they're making it harder to white label, but there are some solutions. So first of all, what is a license holder? As I said before, it's like a dispensary, a manufacturer, a cultivator, or a transportation, and as well as some other things. But those are the big ones. And so those are the license holders that I'm going to be referring to on these next points. So the first solution is if someone with a license adds the white label person, like myself, to their license, either as a owner or as someone with financial interest holder. Those are the two terms that are documented in the laws and regulations. You have to document anyone who owns 20% or more. They're considered an owner. And then if they own less than 20%, or if it's a partnership, like a white label thing, that would be a financial interest holder. So both of those must be documented in licenses, and usually they have to be documented on the municipality level. So for the city or county, wherever you're getting your local permits, they're going to be requiring that information too. But what's great is, I just say I'm partnered with them. I don't have to give them any money. They don't give me any money, and all of a sudden I'm on their license, and that's sort of a shortcut to white label. Obviously, they'd have to trust me, and they're putting their license in jeopardy if I do anything risky or that causes their license to be voided. So there would, in theory, be a cost associated with adding me to that license for the increased risk that they're assuming. But I don't know what that cost is, and I don't know, how much, how to quantify that risk personally, because I'm not on that side of the table. But from speaking to the grower and the consultant, it seems that they have a good sense for that, and they'd be more than happy to walk me through it. So I think I'll have more information on that on future updates. So that's the first solution, is to just add their name to the license, which is not an easy solution, and it doesn't scale. If you want to do this, 50 or 100 times, it's a lot of work to amend a license with the state, and if I was in the grower's position, I don't know if I would want to be adding on all these people to my license. It might just be too much risk, especially for all the people who are risk averse. Well, that's a lie. Not everybody in the cannabis industry is risk averse, because there's still the federal prohibition, and there's the risk of federal crackdown, as well as changes in local laws. So I think there's a lot of people who are willing to take risks right now in the cannabis industry, myself included. All right, so the second solution is you could sell your brand to someone with a license. Now, obviously, if you're looking to build a brand, it doesn't make sense to sell it, but you might be able to sell like a partnership with it. So, like let's say there's a grower in Humboldt, right, who I want to partner with, and I'll sell him 50% of my brand, and then all of a sudden, my brand is his brand, and I'm just sort of an equity holder in that area of the business, and then he adds me to his license. So I think either way, he'd have to add me to his license. No, he wouldn't. Anyway, I'd have to dig into that. I don't think I'd have to be added to the license, but the question is, what's the definition of a financial interest holder, right? And that's like how many tiers of corporations do you need before someone's no longer a financial interest holder, right? Or is it anybody with an equity in the company, or is it any employee? And those are questions that I don't know, and fortunately I don't have to answer right now. All right, so the third way to solve this problem is to get an easy license, like a cannabis event organizer. Apparently those are the easier licenses to get, and then that way you're in their system and you have a license, so that you can work with anybody. You can buy flower, you can sell, you might be able to sell flower, you can at least distribute it to or you can sell it to a dispensary because you have a license. This seems like a really easy way to do it, but the problem is it's also, if too many people did this, I could see them shutting down that route and saying, here's a list of specific things you can do with a cannabis event organizer license, and creating your own product, your own branded product is not one of those things. I think that regulation is probably coming if they're still going to be focusing on shutting down the white label, but there's a lot of different ways around. And the last one is there are apparently license holders who own buildings or lease buildings, and then they co-work in that space. So they would let me rent, a desk in their office, which then would put me on their license because I'm in their regulated space, and then all of a sudden I'm in this system. Now, I don't know if they have to include me on their license or if how that works, but the consultant I spoke with seemed to think that it's a really easy and inconsequential thing to do, and a lot of people are doing it. So regardless of how you get your name or your company into that into the state system, there's a couple different ways to do it, and then there's risks and that sort of thing. But yeah, those were all the things I learned over the last couple days. I'm still, so the numbers I've gotten so far are $200,000 to is sort of a really good entry point to as far as capital needed to start a cannabis business in 2019 in California. But when I asked them, I said, well, what about $50,000, right? And I'm like, let's bargain. And they said it's theoretically possible, but I haven't seen their business plan that explains why 200,000 is necessary or why 50,000 would be less. And I have not built my own business plan yet, so I don't even have my own opinion on what the number is. I just know that anything over 50,000 is a lot harder to raise than anything under 50,000. So that's sort of the number that I had in my mind. I mean, I'd love to do this for 10,000 and then fund it myself, but at 50,000 I'd have to get investors. So those are all the things I learned this week. I hope that you found this helpful, and if you have any questions, drop me a line. I'm going to be creating some other channels, so here's my website, I hope. And if you go there, you can see all the different channels that I have, and some of the other videos I'll be creating, like the product review videos, and then I'm also hoping to do like a history show. So if that channel's still around, you'll see it in the link below. And And that's everything I had to report this time. So I hope you're enjoying these videos. Feel free to share them with a friend or subscribe or like or whatever. And I'll see you in a couple days with updates. Thanks for stopping by.